Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Aminah Binti Hassan, and today our group will be presenting on William Wordsworth. In this presentation, we will be discussing about his biography, the 5 literary works that we chose, linguistic parallelism, linguistic deviation, and style of writing. Firstly, William Wordsworth biography. He was born on 7th April 1770 in Britain and passed away on 23rd April 1850. Throughout his life, he learned poetry from his father, John Wordsworth, and during his session in Parkhead Grammar School, he realized his love for poetry. In 1787, he decided to publish sonnets in European magazine. While he was studying in St. John College, Cambridge, he set out a Europe tour which influenced his works a lot in terms of interest and sympathy in life and also troubles of common man. In 1793, he published his poetry collection called An Evening Walk and Descriptive Sketches. In 1797, he met Samuel Taylor Coleridge, which influenced his life a lot. They collaborated on the most significant work in English Romantic movement, which was called Lyrical Ballads, produced in 1789. Finally, he also wrote a play called The Borderers, which was a tragedy. That's all from me. Moving on to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ain Suraya and I will be continuing on explaining the 5 poems by William Wordsworth that we have chosen for this assignment. Okay, the first poem, composed upon Westminster Bridge, September 3rd, 1802, is a sonnet that speaks about the speaker's beautiful encounter with nature in a quiet early morning. Wordsworth wrote this poem when he was on his way to France with his sister Dorothy. So this poem was written when the Industrial Revolution took place in the Great Britain. So this poem describes the beauty of London before industrial and governmental activities began and started to pollute the air and break the commerce. This is because later in the day, when the processes such as shipping traffic and factory work have begun, the air will not be silent and smokeless anymore. So this poem can be seen as a rebellion against the Industrial Revolution, which was happening around the time. The second poem is My Heart Leaps Up, which was inspired by nature, just like many of his poems in this period. The speaker describes the feeling of joy upon seeing a simple rainbow, and this poem also argues that humans first feel the sense of awe and wonder when looking at this natural world is when they were children. So in turn, adults strive to maintain the maintain the enthusiastic reactions to the natural world just like when they were children. And that's why this poem appreciates the importance of carrying childlike enthusiasm and wonder throughout life, just like how Wordsworth had been emphasizing throughout his works. And the third poem is I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, which was subsequently published in 1807 with a revised version published in 1815. According to Dorothy, she and her brother came across beautiful daffodils when they were strolling in the year of 1802. So this poem details the poet's encounters with the majestic daffodils in the field beside the lake. And this poem also stressed the feeling of enjoying the spellbinding beauty of nature and its impact on the human mind can leave the reader desiring to spend more time with nature. Next, The World is Too Much with Us is one of the central figures of the English Romantic movement, in which this poem laments the withering connection between nature and humankind due to the worldly concerns. And at the time when this poem was written, England was a hotbed of invention and entrepreneurship, which caused people to no longer in touch with nature. Jamaica at that time lost their pleasure, their joy, their comforts of the peaceful of nature because of the broken connection. And the last poem is Desideria. Wordsworth wrote this poem when he experienced immense pain and suffering in which he lost his 3-year-old daughter, Catherine. So this poem remains as one of his finest depictions of personal grief because he expressed his sadness, his loneliness, and his grief in this poem. And that's all from me. The next will be continued by the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Amira Shazwani binti Azmi, and I will continue to present about the language element, specifically on linguistic parallelism. So based on the 5 poems that we have selected from William's Wordsworth, it can be deduced that the poet used 2 important aspects, which are the first one is repetitions of words, and also phonological parallelism, which involve repetitions of assonance, consonants, and also homonyms. So from the 5 poems that we have selected and analyzed, this is one of the example poem by William Wordsworth entitled Composed upon Westminster Bridge, September 3, 1802. So as for words repetition, there are 2 types of repetitions happen in this poem, which are the first one is repetitions of words that represent nature, which are the words earth, fields, sky, sun, valley, rock, hill, and river. And the second repetitions of words also happen which represent silence, such as the word silent, calm, asleep, and also still. For the phonological parallelism, there are 3 important aspects that fall under this category, which are the first one is assonance, repetitions of vowel sound which happen in line 2. For example, dull would he be of soul who could pass by. So this is the sentence that happened at this where the sound of O happen. Okay, the second is consonant, repetitions of consonant sound in the same line. Especially in line 6. So the sound of S has been repeated, which is ships, towers, domes, theatres, and temples lie. And lastly, homonyms, which simply can be described as words that sound the same but are spelled differently. And it can be found in line 4 and 5, where and where, line 10, 12, 14, heal, will, and still, and lastly in line 11 and 13, deep and asleep. We move on to the usage and its significance. So most of William Wordsworth, especially these 5 poems, include the elements of words repetitions, assonance, consonants, and also homonyms. So the repetitions of words and homonyms used by the poet in order to emphasize a feeling or idea, create rhythm, and or develop a sense of urgency. So this usage of element in poetry actually can be a very powerful tool to be used by the poet and also the writers. So the use of assonance, which can be described as repetitions of vowels, we know that it is different from consonant, which refers to repetitions of consonant sounds, right? So along with rhyme and alliteration, it is also can be one of the powerful poetic device that mostly poets or writers use in order to make their words stand out, and this can be proven that William Wordsworth used this kind of element. And lastly, the use of consonants, which attempt to underscore or emphasize the emotions behind the words that simply words cannot convey. So it's important is to make sure that the imagery is clearer. So in this context, it can be said that the use of consonants is actually act as a tool that enables the poet to formulate a fine and powerful structures for his poetry, and also to create a background for the themes that underlying the poetry itself. So that's all from me.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurul Iman binti Zulfitri, and I'll continue with the second language element, which is linguistic deviations found in William Wordsworth poems. So linguistic deviation can be seen as a creative use of language which differs from the norms of literary convention or everyday speech. The most significant linguistic deviation used by the poet are phonological deviation and graphological deviation. Firstly, phonological deviation found in most of his poems are apocope, syncope, and also the mispronunciation of words. Apocope is the omission of the final sound of a word, such as in the poem Desideria, whereby the words should be recalled instead of recalled. So Wordsworth used apocope such as recalled to indicate that he can arrange the sound pattern of the poem better. The next one is syncope. Syncope is the omission of the medial part of a word, which can be seen from the poems Composed Upon Westminster Bridge and I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, whereby the words should be never and over. Wordsworth used syncope such as never instead of never, so that he can be different from the expected standard. Lastly, Wordsworth used the mispronunciation of the words doth instead of does and glides instead of glides, which can be found in his poem Composed Upon Westminster Bridge. Besides, graphological deviation is one of the most significant linguistic deviation which has been used by Wordsworth. It can be said that graphological deviation occurs in all 5 of his poems that we have analyzed. Graphological deviation is the deviation in which poets disregard the rules of writing. It refers to the whole writing system such as punctuation, paragraphing as well as spacing. In Wordsworth poems, he used the graphological deviations such as exclamation mark, capital letters as well as dash. The use of the exclamation mark in the poem Composed Upon Westminster Bridge can be seen in line 11, deep, line 13, God, and line 14, still. So the use of exclamation mark can also be seen in Desideria, my heart leaps up, and the world is too much with us. Next is the use of capital letters, which is found in the poem The World is Too Much with Us in line 3, Nature, line 5, Sea, line 9, Great God, line 10, Pagan, line 13, Proteus, and line 14, Triton. The use of capital letters can also be seen in Desideria, Composed Upon Westminster Bridge, and My Heart Leaps Up. Lastly, Wordsworth used the dashes, which shows graphological deviation. For example, in the poem Desideria, Wordsworth used a lot of dashes which can be found in line 1, 2, 5, and also 9. It can also be seen in the poem I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud in stanza 3, line 5, I gazed and gazed, but little thought, whereby the poet used 2 dashes to emphasize the word gazed and to set off apostrophes that contain commas so it would not be confusing to the reader. Hence, it can be seen that most of William Wordsworth's poems, specifically the 5 poems that we have analyzed, shows that the poet is more fond in using phonological and graphological deviations. The phonological deviation used by the poet is significant as it may help in enhancing the element of interest to the readers. Since a deviation is an unusual use of a language, it appears appealing as the readers find it different. The use of apocope and syncope in most of his poems make his language seems creative and also inventive. The graphological deviation is one of the most significant linguistic deviation which has been used by the poet. William Wordsworth capitalized certain words in order to lay emphasis on the ideas. The deviant punctuation marks like dashes contribute to reveal the thoughts of the persona, which sometimes can be deduced as hesitations. So that is all from me. Let's move to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nuradia binti Saleh Akbar and I'll proceed the presentation with the style of writing. The writing style of William Wordsworth is simple, as most of the words and sentence structures used in his poems are understandable, as he used words that are natural, straightforward, and attractive in order to communicate through his poems, as can be seen through the linguistic analysis mentioned by the previous presenters. Wordsworth's poems can also be said to be nature-centric, as he lived a simple life and he used his way of writing as him being against the current of Romantic era's literature. In the poems that we've analyzed, there are heavy usage of words to describe the beauty of nature, and we could conclude that Wordsworth was very fond of daffodils. Other than that, the sense of humbleness can be found in his writing, from the way he described the simple way of living by using the nature to find solace in life. William Wordsworth went against the current of his own era by ignoring the poetic diction style of writing, as he realized that it was important for him to write in common people's diction. Even so, he still remained lyrical in his poems, as can be seen in some of his poems, like I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, as the rhyming scheme of the poem is ABABCC. The beauty of his poems is calming, other than it being relatable not only among common people, but it is also looked upon by the higher class society. In conclusion, William Wordsworth is a well-known poet that managed to capture the beauty of nature without using complicated words and sentence structure, as can be proven from the poems that were analyzed in this project. That's all from us. Thank you.